Hey everybody, welcome to Cougar Dash, your WSU affiliate of Dash Sports. I am one of the hosts, Ryan Root. Unfortunately, Cody Schoeler, my other host here, is having some technical difficulties, so we will get started without him for the time being. Hopefully, he'll join us in the near future. We're going to talk about the Pac-12 schedule that was announced just this last weekend, and I can say right now, WSU fans aren't too happy really with the schedule we got going on here, but there are some plus sides. There's definitely some plus sides to this. Let's honestly look at this first week matchup. We got Oregon State over there in Corvallis, and if we have any Beaver fans watching the stream today, I'll be sure to call you out on a couple of things here. But Oregon State against WSU week one, I couldn't picture a better debut for WSU to get the ball rolling in the Rolo era. Our friends over there on Beaver Dash like to wanted to say some words to us this last week, and well, of course, WSU is not going to go down without a fight. It looks like we got Cody back in the show. Cody, how are you doing?
Yes, I'm back. Internet went out right before we were about to go live. I'm not saying anything, but I'm also not saying that it wasn't a cyber attack by Oregon State to stop me from what I'm about to say and what I'm about to do to them. I assume that's what we were talking about week one, with a little bit of rivalry going on. If you want to classify a game that has been the same outcome since 2014 as a rivalry, I guess so.
Yeah, I can start us off a little bit here. We got
Go for it.
some Beaver trash talk we got to settle here. So
Mhm.
OSU, Oregon's second university, as I like to call it. We all know you
I
guys are
like it.
the
I like it.
we all know that you're the doormat of the Ducks over there in Eugene. So if we want to really talk about this rivalry, if you want to call it that, between WSU and OSU, well, you like to bring up that last matchup we had last year where you guys said that we, narrowly beat you because of a breakdown as a team for Oregon State. And, I think if you allow 54 points to any team, let alone WSU, it's not really a good game for any defense ever.
Yeah,
But
we
well,
we know
go ahead.
about breakdowns as a team, and that wasn't one. That was just a bad team on the field.
Absolutely. And, if we want to bring up former games, and you have a really good point bringing up an L in this argument, but we'll bring up a W in this argument also from last season.
Hmm.
Y'all faced Hawaii, Rolo's alma mater over there over there with the Rainbow Warriors. You guys faced Hawaii, were up 14 points at halftime, and didn't score at all in the second half. I mean, I don't know if you guys have a pipeline between Atlanta and Corvallis, but I don't know. Atlanta must be stealing plays from your guys' playbook, because I don't know how you could blow something like that in the second half. You guys had 3 turnovers and still couldn't put any points on the board. You guys ran over 300 yards. You were running the clock out, still couldn't do anything. Now you guys think that we're a little attached to the Minshew era, which I'll give you that. But
Hard
Leach,
not to.
of course, it's hard not to forget the one of the most successful seasons in WSU history. When was the last time that Oregon State's had a successful season? Before you guys were born, probably something like that. You guys keep bringing up Leach, thinking that we're still attached to him. We've probably brought him up less than 5 times on this show. We keep bringing up Mr. Bucket Hat himself,
Hmm.
Coach Rolovich, more than anything. Leach is down there hunting tigers, and we're going to send the Beavers into hibernation. Cody, what do you have to say?
Oh, I agree with everything. I think this is a game that I'm happy to see in week one because it means that we're not going to have to face a team that we're scared of in week one. And like I mentioned earlier, Oregon State, they really have no reason to think they're going to win because they haven't won since 2013. And if you don't know, that's a really long time. Like that's a really long time. I actually looked at some things that happened or did happen that happened in 2013, like just to show you how long of a time that was. It was also the last time Oregon State made a bowl game, so it was the last time they were relevant. The Knicks made the playoffs that year. They're not making the playoffs this year. They're not making the playoffs anytime soon, so I don't know why Oregon State would win. Um, some NFL stuff. Ray Lewis and Brian Urlacher retired, so that's a really long time ago.
Long
Um,
time.
oh,
Jeez.
absolutely. If you remember, the Harlem was happening in 2013. and that seems like forever ago. There were only 6 Fast and the Furious movies. I think
Oh,
now we're up to like 28. Um, and it was the last year that The Office and that Breaking Bad were on TV, and that's is a long time ago. So if so, I just don't see any reason that something's going to change since 2013. There's a reason that WSU has been able to beat them year after year, and it's frankly because they're not very good. The last time they were ranked in the regular season was 2012. WSU is consistently in the rankings. Last year was an off year, but this is a team that's climbed up into the top 10. I just don't think they're on the same level. And so now we can kind of move past that. And I want to ask, what are your reactions to the schedule in terms of some of the other games?
well, Patchon made it clear this is not a schedule that I don't think we were really hoping for. I know we were going to
Hmm.
face some division opponents, but USC after we have an Apple Cup, I believe, right? It's right after the Apple Cup.
Yeah, it is.
Um, I mean, a trip down to LA right after the Apple Cup, arguably our hardest game of the year. A trip
Hmm.
to LA is definitely not something that the Cougs want to get a hold of. But I guess the Pac-12 wants USC and OU to be the representatives for the national playoff. But it is what it is. But I see the schedule and I see nothing less than 500. I see at least 3 wins and possibly
Hmm.
4. And I'm not including my great feelings towards the Apple Cup. That's my 4th win on there. Maybe not
Yeah.
in order, but I'm saying if we have Cal or Oregon State and Colorado as my dubs, and then we have UW as a honest. I like I said, it's in our favor this year. That could be our 4th win. I see a good turnout to have a decent season,
Hmm.
but I mean, tell me what you think.
Yeah, and I think you misspoke. You said Colorado. I think you meant Stanford. That's the
Or
other team we
Stanford,
play. That's
sorry. Yeah.
probably going to be a win. Um, Obviously, it's unfortunate that we get USC as our crossover game while UW gets basement dwelling Arizona. I'd like to switch that, maybe get an easier win, but it's clear the Pac-12 is trying to, make it as easy as possible for a team to escape undefeated. So they gave USC us, but we've seen in the past doesn't always work like that. We've ended some USC dreams before, and I think there's a chance we do it again. A Friday game's always difficult. Obviously, it's not in Pullman as we'd like it would be, but we would like it to be. But we'll see what happens. But in terms of looking at how the schedule did draw out, the Cougars are lucky that they are kind of alternating home and away. They don't have 2 away games in a row. That's helpful. And the games we did get at home are the games that I would have liked us to get at home. Oregon, who is maybe one of the best teams, maybe the best team in the conference, being able to get them at home is helpful. UW, obviously, probably the toughest game just based on how that has gone, but being able to get them at home is helpful. And then Cal, who has destroyed us on the road, but lost when they've come to Pullman. So, do I see undefeated? No, I'm a rational fan, but I don't look at this schedule and just have a dread, because I think there's a lot of winnable games, and especially those tough games, being able to get them at home. I think that's very helpful.
And I'd like to acknowledge some messages here in the chat.
Hmm.
2001, 2002 OSU was legit. Okay, maybe you were born, you might have been getting potty trained, but yeah, okay, sure, I'll give you that one. Over, almost 2 decades ago. Let's see, Jonathan Smith was a good coach. Was that
Hmm.
the OSU coach? What, the guy who's won 7 games in the past 2 seasons? Okay,
Hmm.
and let's see, UW, or you're never in favor against UW. Like, pull up last week's episode. We said it here first. Rolo's out here to get revenge. Okay, he's not.
Hmm.
He doesn't have a counter on his phone for nothing. He knows how much this means to us. He
Hmm.
has a ton of momentum going
Yeah.
into this season, and yeah, it's hard not to be excited for an Apple Cup this year when you know that the coach knew this on the
Hmm.
job interview that he wants to win.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree. I never look at that game and think we're going or to win. I never pencil that in. We've had some
It'll
times
be
where
competitive for sure.
the Cougars have had some times where they probably should have won and haven't. But I mean, if there's any year where it's going to happen, new coach that seems to be taking this really seriously. UW also has a new head coach who, yeah, he was a defensive coordinator, but we've seen a lot of defensive coordinators not be able to, to be the man. So, am I 100% confident we're going to win? No, but am I a little more confident just based on, on Rolovich, on, getting this game at home and all this? Yeah, I am. So, we'll definitely see how
And
that
Cody, I'd like to
happens.
say you briefly brought up the defensive coordinators who came
Hmm.
from a top 10 defense in Wyoming last year. So
Hmm.
Rolo played against
Yeah.
them in the Mountain West, and he knows
Yeah.
how
Hmm.
talented of a coaching staff that they are. So you bring that on top of our
Hmm.
defense that needs some desperate help. I mean, there's a lot of good signs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would love to see Jimmy Lake be embarrassed, but we'll see. We'll get there, in week 4. So that's going to be a fun time. And so I want to go a little bit away from the schedule and going into what's happening soon. WSU, I believe reports are that they're going to start practice on October 9th, which would be, this week. Finally, Rolovich is going to get onto the field coaching this team for the first time. And I want to know, what are some of the biggest storylines? What are the things you're looking at, as WSU this new head coach for the first time?
They don't call us quarterback U for nothing,
Hmm.
right? That's
Yeah.
the biggest question with this whole thing. I mean, when a new coach comes into town, comes to a new sports team, franchise, whatever it may be,
Hmm.
he's going to look at the people who have been there. He's going to look at the people the veterans on this team. And we have veterans kind of across the board in every position except really that quarterback position. I mean,
Yeah.
who's the veteran in there? Cameron, because he's been here
Yeah.
the whole time. I
Hmm.
mean, if you could even count Gunnar Cruz, if we're going off a playing time veteran, the transfer we got from what was it again? Weaver State.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Something like
Okay.
that.
One of the transfer quarterbacks we got from a former university. There's your playing veteran, but then we
Hmm.
got freshmen even coming in. So really, Cameron Cooper is our veteran quarterback that we're turning to right now, and
Yeah.
it it's kind of up to Rolo and the coaching staff. We have a month to prepare for a game, as opposed to any other season, we'd have a handful of months to prepare for a
Hmm.
game. And without our starting quarterback being announced, which is reasonable, we've lost a lot of people, but we have a lot of hope and spark on this bench. That's the biggest question: is we need to figure out this QB ASAP and make sure that they can run this new offense fluently.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, in a normal year, you get to see all these quarterbacks take, game simulation reps in a spring game. We haven't had that, so this is going to be the first time that these guys are getting on any sort of field under Rolo. And I wrote about these kind of off-season storylines in my column at sportspac12.com this week, and one of the things I mentioned was, you know, there's always been a quarterback battle, for the past couple of years, but they were different quarterback battles. This is a battle between who is going to get their first reps ever. Like, this is a very different battle. This is also a battle that has ramifications beyond this year. This isn't a graduate transfer or a senior going to the last year. Whoever gets this job is likely going to have it for a couple of years.
Hmm.
Maybe the other guys transferred, maybe they don't. So this is one of the most important quarterback battles in 5+ years. So this is especially huge this year because we don't know who it's going to be, and whoever it is, if they do a good job, then they've got that job for a handful of years. They're not going to be gone after this year. Another thing that I think is a big thing to watch is looking at the other side of the ball. We've talked a lot about this defense and its problems and its holes and its inexperience, but I see there's three key senior leaders at each level of this defense. You have Will Rogers, the third on the D line, Jahad Woods at linebacker, Skylar Thomas at safety or defensive back, and I want to see how these guys step up and what they do. A new defensive coordinator coming in, they're probably going to be relied on really heavily to mentor and bring the younger guys at their positions along. Like, I think that those three guys are the key to this defense this year. I think if this defense is improved and if this defense looks better, it's obviously, Jake Dicker and the new staff, but it's these three guys. So I think that's another big thing to watch on the opposite side of the ball.
Yeah, I defense wins championships, like they say, and we can't go through shout out to the Seattle Seahawks, of course, again, with
Mhm.
every game is going to be a shootout, it seems, with that defense. And,
Yeah.
that doesn't, I can't really work for this Coug offense, considering
No.
that Borgie and a handful of receivers and some linemen are kind of our playing veterans that have had play time. And then we have Cameron Cooper, who's been observing from the bench this whole time, stepping in, possibly, or Gunner Crew, whoever it may be. That's obviously not the case with. We can't have a shootout every game with a new quarterback, a new offense. That's just not practical. It needs to start with the defensive side of the ball. You need to make sure that they can stay off the. You got to make sure the opponents can stay off the field. Because if we're facing a good run offense, they're going to run that clock down to 0, and we can't get them off. They're going to go chunk by chunk by chunk, end it with 7 points. If we have a 3 and out, they can get another 7 points. Now we're down by 2 possessions, and we're going into the second quarter. You got to keep them off the field. And with, like you said, looking at Will Rogers III, Jahad Woods, Skylar Thomas, these 3 guys are going to have to be the conductors out there on the field. But I trust this defensive coordinating staff a lot, considering it was in Rollo's conference. He knows he wouldn't have reached out to them not only for their success statistically, but I mean, it's a lot like LeBron James in the NBA when he plays all these teams and all these players, and then he brings them onto the Lakers to play with them. He brought Lance Stevenson with him. He brought JaVale McGee, and then he brought some people that may not have panned out all that great. But like you pick up on experiences like this throughout a sporting career, and this is perfect evidence of that. This Wyoming defensive coordinating staff is probably going to take this Cougar defense to the next level and probably bring Speed D back to Pullman.
Yeah, I sure hope so. And I hope Jake Dickert and his staff are a lot better than Lance Stevenson and JaVale McGee. I hope they're maybe a little bit more formidable than that. But, I think that's true. Rolovich has played against these guys. He knows what they're capable of, and he wouldn't have brought him here if he didn't think they were capable.
Frank Vogel was the head coach of that Pacers team he played against in that Heat playoff, and he's coaching the Lakers right now. It's experiences play a huge part in assembling teams.
Yeah, and so I've got another one that I kind of hit on, and I think it's one that you really have to be interested in this team and really follow this team to even know about or care about, and it's the offensive line. 2 key starters from that line are gone. Fred Malagoa at center and Robert Valencia at left guard, I believe. And so I'm interested as a huge football and WSU football nerd as who's going to take over those 2 spots, because that's going to be key, protecting a new quarterback, blocking in this new offense, and just offensive line was something that was really consistent with this team. So, a young guy or 2 is probably going to come in and have a role along that line. And I want to see who it is and how they do, because I think that's going to be huge for this offense.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't get balls downfield if the quarterback's not protected. I mean, you look at numerous teams in the NFL. If you're getting sacked, you're losing yards. It's as simple as that. Minshew, we gotta love him, but Jacksonville's got no O-line help for him. Getting sacked 7 times in these past 2 weeks. No O-line help can only get you so far. And unless you're Russell Wilson, you got to have O-linemen to block not only for the passer, but honestly for Max Borghi. If he's going to have a bigger role in this offense this year, which many people are predicting it will be that way, if you can get Borghi blocks right out the gate, he's shifty enough and he's creative enough to get the yards after he passes that first 5 or so yards. So I definitely agree that offensive line needs to be solidified as much as possible before our first game against OSU, because it leads to success, that leads to points, that leads to protection, and also it prevents injuries.
For sure. Do you have another thing that you're looking at, another kind of off-season storyline before we go on to the next topic?
I mean, kind of branching off of the quarterbacks, of course, it comes to the receivers. Losing Tay Martin, Desmond Patman to the draft, and
Aesop Winston.
Yeah, we've gone through all these receivers in the past couple of years that have panned out and been perfectly fine for the Cougars, but now we're kind of reaching that reset period where the only real veterans we have, Jameer Calvin, Renard Bell, Travell Harris, and then we're kind of back to that next class coming up. So again, they kind of play a similar role to those 3 players on the defense of they got to be veterans and they have to push this new receiving core that's coming up in WSU to perform as best as they can. Because as much as Rolovich is going to have a really new and exciting offense to bring to WSU, it,
Mhm.
we're going to be working with our veteran receivers on most of these plays. We're going to be getting the ball to Calvin and Bell and Harris. And much like Cam and Cooper watching from the bench of all these quarterbacks, they got to learn from that, and they got to be good, messengers of that
Mhm.
offense to the rest of the players.
Yeah, and I think even looking at, like, those guys are the most notable returning slot receivers. The outside,
Mm-hmm.
there's an exodus on the outside. Like, you have
Yeah,
Calvin Jackson Jr. returning, and really that's the only one who's even caught passes out there. So I think that's another position, especially to look at, is those outside receivers, because somebody's gonna
no
have to
more
step
Desmond
up.
Patman. No,
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, Tay Martin, Aesop,
yeah.
Patman, like, all these guys are now gone, and they were there for a while. So I think that's huge, is looking at the outside, because I think the slot is pretty secure, and I think we can rely on that position with those guys. But I think outside is going to be huge looking forward. And so another thing that is kind of another offseason storyline, and something that I really wanted to address, is, are we going to see a COVID outbreak in the Pac-12, with WSU? With anything. NFL kind of had their first week where they really dealt with it. It didn't go MLB level far. Like, it didn't end the season or anything, but it definitely impacted that. So I want to know, like, what do you think? Is it just a foregone conclusion that an outbreak's going to happen?
It's there won't be. I don't predict a 100% containment level of this, which
Hmm.
I unless you have all these players in bubble suits out there, and they're or those big inflatable bubbles that you go in and hit each other with. I'm talking about those big, like, bubble
Oh
boy
yeah.
looking things. Unless you start
Hmm.
playing football in those, and you got all the
Hmm.
coaches on the sideline wearing those, it's not going to be 100% containment, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But what's really important is to make sure that it's handled correctly. I mean, luckily with the I believe it's so the Patriots had Cam Newton test
Hmm.
positive this week, and they had to reschedule their game. While I believe it was a player on the Titans or one of the other teams who did not reschedule their game. Where there was a corner in the NFL, I believe, that tested positive, and they did not reschedule the game. They just shifted him, to
Hmm.
quarantine, and they carried on with the game. But I saw a video earlier this week saying this might be one of those weird situations where you could get to let's bring it back to the Pac-12. You could get to the Pac-12 championship game, and let's just say for it's Oregon and USC. Okay,
Hmm.
if Keenan Slovis gets COVID, you can't really reschedule that game.
Yeah.
That game's a set date. People like to call these guys athletes, but they're student athletes.
Hmm.
They're going to be students on their during their off time, and if you're supposed to go to Oregon or if you're supposed to go to LA to play the Pac-12 title game, and it ends up getting rescheduled to Wednesday instead of that Saturday night, you're now telling an entire football organization to move its way 1,000 miles or whatever on a 3-day notice. It just doesn't work that
Hmm.
way in college football. These are not professional athletes by any means. So it's not like with the NFL where, the Pats and Chiefs were, I believe, supposed to play yesterday instead
Yesterday,
of
yeah.
today.
Hmm.
It's not just to pack it up and we can move it on. The fact that these are collegiate athletes, this is really confined. There's not much flexibility here that
Hmm.
the NFL and the MLB kind of have.
Yeah, I agree that, with the way the schedule is, and with, you're kind of at a point where if something happens, you just have to deal with it and move on. But I think the important thing here is, everybody was concerned with these, protocols, and what the schools are going to do, and what the conference is going to do, and what the NCAA is going to do in terms of testing and all that. And that's important. Like, the daily testing is huge. But at the end of the day, it comes down to these players. It comes down to how serious they take this. There's 80 to 100 players on this team, and for the first time, every single player is of equal importance on this topic. The fourth string nose tackle has just as much influence on whether the whole team gets COVID as Max Borghi does. So it's going to come down to that. We've seen when these bigger issues have come up in the MLB, it was because guys just they left the hotel. negligent. They went to, Lou Williams went
I
to
was just
go
about to
get,
say, yeah.
wings, lemon pepper Lou. So, and those are the things that are avoidable. The NFL, for the most part, up until this week, they were doing really good without the bubble. And it's because these guys are taking it seriously.
And as much as I'd love for the NFL to have 0 fans at every game, that's really up to the organization at that point. Is what in Miami and Dallas and even the Chiefs games that they have fans in. But the fact that we won't have fans, it's just going to be team against team there at the stadium. I think that's the best way to handle it. Pac-12 is doing a good job so far, and I think they've thought this through. Will we have 100% containment? Most likely not.
Yeah.
But Pac-12's working hard, and I got to give them credit for that.
Yeah, I mean, COVID's going to play a role in this season, and it's just a question of how big that role is. So that's all the time we have for this week. Thanks for stopping by and taking a listen. Just remember, you can find our written content exclusively at sportspac12.com, and make sure to give them a follow on Twitter at sportspac12. Written content. Forgot that word. You can find links to that written content on our website, dashsports.tv, and make sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at dashsportstv. Lastly, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Dash Sports, where you can find all of our shows and clips. Thanks for tuning in.